Hello there and welcome to the Daily Discussion. Today, let's discuss class fantasy, the concept of feeling that your class is unique, of having an individuality that separates it from other classes. In theory, this should be fairly easy to do. I mean, warlocks should feel distinctly different from mages, which should feel different to shaman, which should feel different to warriors, etc, etc. But over World of Warcraft's many years, the classes have become somewhat similar. This is mostly a result of attempts at balancing the classes so that there aren't huge gaps in capability, which, to be fair, I think has succeeded to a certain degree. Talking about balancing classes is a huge prospect, so instead I'd like to focus on the idea of making the classes once again feel unique. Now, the biggest way to make a class feel unique is through the way it plays, without a doubt, because you're playing the class non-stop, it needs to play distinctly. As a warrior, you should feel like the mechanics of the Fury specialization mimic the kind of berserker rage of recklessly swinging weapons around. It should be fast-paced, you should be using your abilities recklessly. And that should play differently than an arms warrior with its huge single swings, massive weapon just smash! And that should play differently from a Death Knight, who focuses on empowering their weapon with dark magic. This is most likely how Blizzard will focus on improving class fantasy, and there are lots of interesting things to be said about that. However, I do not know every class in that amount of detail, so I'd like to focus instead on a few other things that I think could be done to improve the class fantasy for every class. Smaller, simpler things that can start to add up to building that class fantasy. It all starts, in my opinion, with the class order halls. This is a fantastic way to start the class fantasy improvements, a place that belongs entirely to your class. But let's build on that. Not only would this be a place where, you would go and you would alter your artifact weapon, where you would get missions and, send your champions off to do their thing, but I'd also love to see this be a place for lower level characters to go as well. A place where levelers can appear to do quests. So let's take the Peak of Serenity as an example. As monks level up, they are routinely called back to the peak about every 10 levels to continue their training, sparring with masters of different techniques. Not only does this allow them to get access to some pretty decent weapons, but it also allows them to go to their own place, see their class in action, and it also teaches them how to use their abilities. You have one master that can only be defeated by using Touch of Death. You have a master that you have to interrupt. You have a master that teaches you to get out of the fire. Things like that. They even have a daily quest that has them spar with a master in order to get a buff that helps them level up. So, why not have something similar for every class? A daily that asks a leveler to return to their class order hall and perform some kind of task, such as sparring with a master, healing the injured, cleansing the sick, healing the land, hunting a monster, something class-related. That would immediately start building up the fantasy of the class from the get-go, as soon as you started leveling that character up. Because, unfortunately, it's all well and good to talk about class fantasy, but if you have to go through 100 levels worth of not feeling like your class to get to that point, people are going to be bored at that point. They're going to have lost that want to feel like their class. So more than that, why not use this chance to reintroduce class quests? Now, a lot of class quests used to be frustrating and grindy and annoying, but there are so many potential quests that you could reintroduce with today's technology to eliminate a lot of the frustration. I mean, take the Shaman one. You would have to wander all over the world in order to get your totems. So why not use mechanics that teleport you across the world, or give you increased movement speed, or let you have a temporary mount? Just something cool, Something cool. It should always be cool. I'd like to go into more detail about class quests in the future, in class-specific videos, but I'd also like to see the daily quests that I talked about involve high-level players. So let's say that any character above level 100 is a master of their class. Why not have a way to represent that in the world? I mean, you could easily have, NPCs saluting you, mentioning, Hail Master, things like that, but what about doing it mechanically as well? What about a mirror daily quest, or a weekly quest, that has a master working with a lower level player in some way? Now, of course, before we go further, there would need to be safeguards in check that would prevent abuse, because there would be nothing worse than an abusive person completely killing your want for a class. So I've come up with a simple example of what I mean to let you know what I had in mind. So let's say you're a master warrior. You might be asked by a specific trainer. By the way, I'd like to see spec-specific trainers. And they might ask you to demonstrate to initiates how to use your spec-specific abilities. So, for example, they would have you charge a training dummy, then use Colossus Smash, then Mortal Strike, then Sweeping Strikes, then Rend, then Mortal Strike again, just as an example. Something really quick and easy. As you do it, the game records your actions, so to speak. So overall, it would only take you about 30 seconds or so. Something nice, quick, easy, and simple for you. So, warriors could hit training dummies, druids could cleanse diseases, warlocks could enslave a demon, shaman could summon an elemental, just stuff like that, just stuff that your class does. Then, when a low-level player came along, the game could give them a daily quest that asks them to examine how a master of the class works, and then you could have an NPC copy of the master player appear and perform the process exactly as the player did. So it would be called the same name, it would have the same guild name, it'd have the same title, it would have their badass transmog, it would be exactly as they did it. Blizzard have shown they have the capability and the technology of doing this. Not only would it allow a high-level player to get involved in increasing the class fantasy, but it would let a lower-level player see a master in action, up close, to see their amazing transmog, to see their abilities cleaving enemies apart, or summoning and controlling pets, or hunting enemies, anything like that. Another great way to increase class fantasy is through the music of the game. World of Warcraft's soundtrack has been getting progressively better since its inception, and the class order halls are the perfect opportunity to develop pieces of music for the individual classes. Monks already have their unique pieces of music, playing in the background right now, so why not extend that to every class? Why not have big, booming drums for warriors, or tranquil music for druids? This would just be another small way to increase that class fantasy, without making huge sweeping changes to classes. It's also important to note that this music should be unique. It shouldn't just be, oh, here's the Moonglade music for druids, or here's the Vrykul music for warriors. It would need to be unique, so you know this piece of music is for warriors, this piece of music is for death knights, things like that. There can definitely be some overlap in that regard, but I think it's important to make it unique, because that's the whole point of this, to make classes unique. So those are just a few examples of how I feel class fantasy could be improved outside of tweaking class mechanics. No doubt we're going to see some big changes announced at BlizzCon, so what would you like to see, mechanically or thematically? Let me know in the comments if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. Today's piece of music will be from the revamped version of Zol Garub. This particular piece is called Mandukir, and it's one of my favourite troll pieces in the game. It really paints the picture of a dark, dangerous, blood-soaked corner of a deep jungle where the Bloodlord does his work. So thank you very much for watching, and I wish you the best of luck in the world of Warcraft.